Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversation with Calvin, We the Species. Wow. Chronologically, I'm looking at the time. It's 4:44, and people who know me know that that's a very powerful number in my life. It's helped me move mountains. And it's also Friday the 13th. And chronologically, this is going to probably be up on Monday. This is great. Uh, I've been talking with Julie Cruse for a long time. I monopolized a conversation, and her journey is beyond my comprehension, what she's gone through and what she's doing, because it does ring home to me. She's the author of The Burn List, a memoir of abuse from home to higher education. She's holding it up. I'm holding it up. It's uh, it's a, by the way, it's such a wow, and it is so important what she's done and the courage to do this. But coming from, I'm just looking at my notes: abusive childhood and enduring academic exploitation, which people don't even have a handle on. Listen, I taught at Rutgers. This is news to me, but it's not. It's there. And actually, ladies and gentlemen out there in television land, I got pages and pages from Julie's site that talks about things that are going wrong. Academicabuse.com. You won't believe the extent and the depth of this. Then I went online and I just looked at all these former Brock volleyball coach suspended. We're talking about Mozambique. Harvard women's hockey coach moved to the mediation and gender discrimination. Cal State San Bernardino administrator awarded $6 million for gender discrimination, and on and on and on. As I'm digesting it, it's a wow. Your life, your journey, your bravery, your courage is amazing. And so I'm so glad we have the opportunity, Julie, to chat. So I'm done with my monologue. Little intro.
Yeah, that's a tough act to follow, but thank you for the introduction. I'm super excited to be here. And I don't know, I guess we're going to be talking a lot about myself. So I'm kind of hard pressed for words. I think if people want to know about me, they can go to my website, which is juliecruse.com. But the long and short of it is, yes, I bootstrapped up from a very abusive childhood and spent 20 years in higher ed as, both a student and a professional across lots of different types of colleges. So I have a pretty good perspective on what's going on there.
Okay. And uh, our commonality, we're Big Ten
Yeah.
personalities. You've got Ohio
Yep.
State on your resume, a master's. I got Rutgers. By the way, I also, when I went to your site, I looked at some of the things that you're going to deal with, that you deal with, the things that are just beyond my grasp: academic bullying, discrimination, sexual harassment, retaliation, intellectual property theft, which is really big these days with AI and all that stuff, grooming and coercion, biased letters of recommendation, the impact of harmful academic practices. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And so you are so brave in this. So, uh, it's so important. This is so important. It really is. So, before the burn list, I hold it up. It's a great cover, by the way, and I love the cover because it's not an artist; it's real stuff.
Yeah.
And
Thank
I
you.
love the cover. So, before the burn list, how did you understand power? Uh, Understanding power, and how did academia change that understanding for you? Power.
Yeah. So one of the themes that I explore throughout my book is power and how people abuse power and my different understandings of power at different points throughout my life. So I start in the book with early childhood, and from the very beginning, you see the dynamic that I was raised around, which was very much one of men abusing women, and then going into the school environment and seeing the haves bullying the have-nots, and school staff catering to children that came from wealthier homes because their parents were going to be donors, So I, really kind of had my eyes opened at a very young age. Um, but I was taught, it was ingrained in me that if you work hard, you win big. And fortunately for me, my high school experience was very much like that. And I worked hard and I got the lead roles and I got the scholarships and all the gold stars. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'm ready to go out there and win at life. And I get into higher ed and kind of started trying to play by the rules that I learned in my high school, which was, a really great place, and find out that, okay, this isn't how this works. This is more like grade school again. But I didn't really kind of get to that realization linearly. It took a long time and a lot of experiences for me to kind of connect the dots and accept that the Ivy Tower, this place that I had idealized my whole life, wasn't what I thought and hoped that it was. And it took a long time for me to let go of that. Um, so yeah, I'd say this too. My book actually, it opens with a pretty horrific scene that started in it took place back in 1984, and it was the first time I and my siblings witnessed the brutal rape and beating of my mother that went on for roughly 10 hours that night.
Oh,
And that was what kicked off the whole pattern of systemic abuse in my home,
mm,
where, what she experienced, the brutality of that caused her to develop schizophrenia and other brain injuries, mental
mm.
health issues. And she herself became abusive and let additional abusers into the home.
Oof.
So I guess what I mean to say there is that growing up in an environment like that, my threshold for what was considered abuse was so high that I believe that's why it took me so long to understand that what was happening in higher ed was also abusive. Like, if it wasn't a 2x4 to the back of the head, how could it possibly be violence? Was kind of what was going on in my mind. But eventually I did kind of get the memo that what's happening in higher ed is nothing short of the gender-based violence that I experienced at home. It's rampant in higher ed as well.
Wow. It just dawned on me as you're saying these things in your childhood. I interviewed yesterday. He has a clinic in Israel, actually, and they're devoted to child abuse. And it's been running for 40 years with all
Yeah.
kinds of therapists and dealing with all kinds of child abuse and mental health issues and stuff. And we'll talk about it afterwards. But I'm listening to you, it's like, oh, wow. So, uh, I mean, it's like I don't want to let you go here because this stuff is just so in my senses. So, was there a moment when you realized the stuff that was happening to you was not necessarily an individual misconduct, but something more systemic?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That would have been, it was during my PhD program, which I later, because of all of this, had to exit out of and turn into a second master's. But by the time I was enrolled in that PhD program, it was my third degree program. So I had experienced different types of misconduct, intellectual property theft, sexual misconduct, blackmail,
God.
all of this when I was an undergrad. And then when I went into grad school, I thought I escaped that, now it's going to be a better environment. And it wasn't, it was actually worse. And then I changed careers and went into a different PhD track thinking, okay, now I'm out of it. And I started seeing the same exact abuse patterns there. And not only was I seeing it, I was being told about it, I was witnessing it all along the way from undergrad to grad to PhD. And so by the time I was in my PhD program, I was like, that was when I started to make the cognitive leap that I talked about, of reverting back to my understanding of higher ed as kind of like an equivalent arena for gender-based violence as my home was. So eventually, I drop out of all of, I didn't really drop out, but I exit out of my PhD with a second master's. I go back home. I land a job in higher ed. And once again, I'm thinking, I'm safe because I work here now. No, you're not safe if you work there, especially not if you're a woman. And again, I had to learn that one the hard way. So after I went through it at not one but two institutions during my professional time in higher ed, that was when I realized, okay, I need to get out. There's no saving this place. It's everywhere. There's no running from it. There's no escaping it. I've got to go. And so I left higher ed, and that was about the time that I started thinking, like, I wish there had been someone to warn me about all of this, and nobody did, right? Like, it's this big dirty secret that everybody in higher ed knows about, but nobody's talking about it, and that enables it. And that was when I decided to write my book, and that's when I created academicabuse.com, which is where I have the data dashboard,
Yeah, I
which
see that.
gathers news stories every day, and I check them. I think the last time I checked was February 12th, so I'm behind because I didn't expect there to be so many stories. Like you said, like I think last year there were almost 6,000 stories about this, and these are just the ones that my RSS feeds are
Correct.
capturing.
Correct.
So, it's become quite a job to actually keep up with cleaning that data. But that platform, academicabuse.com, is the platform that I created with a hub of not only data, but also resources to help people who are going through different types of abuse to, like, hey, what should I do if I'm going through this? And they can look and read and see some of the strategies that I've learned over 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Should be required reading,
Yeah,
Well, it should be. Uh,
I agree.
it, 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 it's it's a wow, it's a wow for me just absorbing all this because I had no idea. And, I skirted through academia. I wasn't deeply involved and was in and out. I did it quickly at Rutgers and I experienced it. I climbed a mountaintop as Martin Luther King, I climbed a mountaintop to experience teaching and influencing young minds, and it was wonderful. But I didn't pursue, and I was already. It's funny. I started teaching. Most of my contemporaries were playing golf. You know,
Yeah.
because I started at such a late age. Whatever. Um, the title, the burn list, is in this picture you holding a flame is rather incendiary by design. What did you want, and what do you want to ignite from that?
Well, I'm going to say this. If you want to know, you're going to have to read the book because the clues about that are in there, and if you're going to love it. So I don't want to spoil that by answering the question outright. But as for what I hope to achieve, I think the number one thing that was on my mind was coming out of what I call the Ivy closet, which is my term for the nature of stakeholders and victims keeping the dirty little secrets of what's happening in higher ed, and then that secret keeping enabling further abuse of power in higher ed. To quote myself in the book, I actually say this book was my attempt to do what I couldn't at 3 years old: climb out the window and go get help.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
the second part of what I was trying to do is I wanted the book to serve as a rallying cry to survivors everywhere, especially those currently caught in what scholar Anne J. Lane calls academia's dirty little secret. Silence is violence, right? So what does it look like when we, as victims or survivors who may or may not have felt safe speaking out within the institution, find our own platforms for speaking outside of it? And I guess that's my thesis, is that if we do stuff like this, like what I've done here and what I've done at academicabuse.com, that will lead to a public reckoning. So I say in the end of the book, I strike the match and I hand it to you.
well, that's powerful. Really powerful stuff. Was there anything, and I am always sensitive to this, and everything I say and do, I'm always Do I put this in? Do I put it out? Was there anything you were afraid to include, but you did anyway?
Oh yeah, all of it.
All of it.
Absolutely all of it. I mean, writing a memoir is, requires a different level of honesty than maybe any other form of writing. You're putting all sorts of painful experiences in there. But I wanted to do it completely raw. So I just wanted it to be, like I said, I'm coming out of the closet about my painful experiences. Would that mission be served if I'm withholding? No, then that would be me staying in the closet. And I don't want to be in the closet anymore. I'm coming out. So, but there was a lot that I did exclude, not because I was afraid to, but because there's just only so much you can put in a single book. So that's why at some point I plan to release missing chapters or additional content. Um, if, people provide like a proof of purchase or show me a post about it or something, I haven't really quite decided yet what that's going to look like, but yeah, there's been some content that has been excluded out of necessity for the purpose of
Sure.
length, but
Okay.
yeah,
Sure.
it'll come out if people are interested.
Sure. Yeah, that was an issue when I wrote my tortoise book, which I should show. I always like to show it when I'm doing this. I wrote my tortoise. There's a tortoise in my hair. I sent my editor, 130,000 words, 95,000 come back, and a whole bunch of chapters get wiped out. That's just part of it. But they're there floating around here somewhere. Um, okay. This is interesting, and I'm trying to ponder this, but you're going to answer it. Why are high achieving students and creative or different students? Do they often, am I making the wrong statement? But they somehow seem more vulnerable. Is that true?
I would agree
Different?
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say don't predators like shiny prey. I mean, and then the other side of that is that gatekeeping in higher ed is so baked in that faculty have quite a bit of latitude to really suppress or subjugate students that they might view as competition to them. Right. So if you're a standout, if you're a shining star, and a faculty member in your field is looking at you like one day you're going to be, a competitor to them, what motivation do they have to allow you to flourish or to allow you to even get your degree? And in fact, they have the exact opposite motive because they have conflicts of interest, right? Do they benefit personally from someone who's high achieving, eclipsing them or questioning their research? Right? Maybe they don't. And then on the flip side of that, there's the reality that students that are coming into higher education are oftentimes already financially unstable and they're oftentimes already desperate for success. Um, so that makes them really vulnerable and really dependent at the same time. If you're in a position of being desperate and having no resources for defense, right? That makes you easy prey. But if you're both easy and shiny prey, watch out.
Okay. Um, Also interesting. What mechanism inside universities protect abusers rather than students? It's like an age-old thing.
Yeah. Yeah, this is I have a lot of opinions about this, but it brings us right back to the topic of power. Academic institutions grant power over time in exchange for certain demonstrated loyalties. So you have basically a situation where um, anyone who's in academia is already in an academic subfield, right? So if they're a professor, they're teaching some portion of history or philosophy or whatever. They're in an academic subfield. They're going to go to conferences. They're going to go present their research. They're going to read other people's research. They're going to cite other people's research. They're going to know each other. So not only have they, through demonstrating loyalty to their own institution, climbed the ranks of power, getting to be tenured and full professor and so on and so on, their colleagues at other institutions are doing the same thing. And because the colleagues, the peers at peer institutions, right, are using each other's work and building a conversation together, right? That builds cross-institutional loyalty. You might shake hands with someone at a conference and go get a drink with them afterward, and then all of a sudden you're friends, you know? And so then there's this boundary that's transgressed. So then that brings us around to the idea, if somebody files a complaint, right, then if they're filing a complaint against someone that you're connected to in this subfield, that is a threat to you. If one of you goes down, maybe all of you get affected, right? So there's conflicts of interest that incentivize these faculty to be loyal to not only their institution, but to one another across institutions. So it's a pretty toxic landscape for a victim or survivor to try to navigate. And then you add to that fact that when a complainant comes forward, the university is policing itself at that rate. So, and they're relying on faculty witnesses and decision makers who themselves are riddled with conflicts of interest from the get-go, right? So they might have a hearing panel made up of randomly selected faculty to adjudicate an accused. And who do they have allegiance to in that situation? Who are they going to want to protect? And how does this kind of setup inspire any kind of confidence in a survivor who wants to make a complaint, right? Like, what are the risks? So, and then the last thing I want to say about this, just in this conversation, is that, you know, when you go report a crime to the police, right? When you report a crime to the police, the police don't go knock on the accused's door and say, you know, Cal reported that you did whatever to his car. They're not going to do that, because what would that do? That would cause the accused to know that you ratted them out, and then maybe they want to punish you for doing so, right? But in higher education, the way it works is once a complaint becomes formally filed, formally initiated, the complainant's identity and their complaint are disclosed to the accused. So if the accused happens to be grading the complainant, or, you know, involved in deciding whether or not the complainant passes their defense or anything like that, right, that sets up that complainant for immediate retaliation. And
Wow.
It's and also there are so many loopholes for retaliation and doing it covertly under the radar in ways that can't really be evidenced for a complainant to then complain about in addition to their original complaint. So these are the mechanisms that I believe actively protect abusers, rather than not only students, but any kind of staff going through this as well.
I'm listening to you, and the vein of this last question. So off topic of some of the things I wanted, but is there with everything that went on with a lot of the Ivy League, you know, Columbia, Harvard, their presidents stepping down, in Penn, UPenn, stepping down because of their inactivity, their failure to be a little bit more proactive doing all this, the protests that were going on last spring on campus. So I'm asking you, what you're talking about, this whole area is powerful stuff. So is there a bit more, I want to spit this out the right way, based on all that I've seen with three presidents stepping down and universities getting beat up and losing, you know, some of their funding and stuff, or is academia a little bit more responsive to these, in general, an umbrella term, to things going on that are wrong?
Yeah, I'm skeptical.
Okay.
I'll say why, because I don't see those resignations as anything other than occurring by force. We don't typically see a president go after higher ed in this way. We do see, so if a lot of complaints are getting on the Department of Education's radar, they will go and investigate a university, and they can withdraw federal funding from them, and it has happened in the past. We're just seeing it happen at a really widespread scale right now with the current administration. So when that administration is no longer in power, what's to stop universities from going right back to their old ways? Like right now, they have a threat, they have a check against their power. But when the check is no longer there, what will they do? I mean, this has been going on for time immemorial.
Sure.
So I don't think they're just going to be all of a sudden fixed.
No.
No, I don't think so.
No, but I thought it was kind of refreshing that somebody gets their hand slapped, because
Oh, yeah.
there are some gross injustices going on, and people looking the other way, and
Yeah.
and I kind of
Because
like
of the
that.
data dashboard, I've read both sides of those stories. Like I've read the stories where faculty are saying that their freedoms are being violated. And I've read the stories where students on campus are saying, we told HR that we were getting death threats, that we got beat up, that we were getting spat at, that we were getting hazed and bullied, and nobody did anything. They covered it up. Right. So I feel like part of me wants to look at those faculty and be like, yes, academic freedom, but not at the expense of, protected classes.
Mm-hmm. And there's particulates of similarity into some of this stuff and what you're talking about and experienced. Uh, um, the hushing up and not paying attention. So okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, there sure is. From your perspective, moving on to Title IX, the whole processes and all that, and it was so well intended. That whole process, does that like re-traumatize sometimes some students? Uh,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing is, if you're a student, right, and you're currently navigating this kind of dynamic, and then you have to file a Title IX complaint, right? A Title IX complaint isn't like you just walk up there and tell them something happened and then they handle the rest of it. It requires a lot of interviewing and time and evidence, and then the because they don't prohibit defamation in the process, that gives the accused the opportunity to come back and launch a smear campaign against the victim as self-defense, right?
mm,
And so those things are re-traumatizing. How can you cope with what's happened to you when you're inundated with time-consuming complaint procedures, and just bureaucratic red tape? And then in addition to that, like I said, your identity is disclosed right away to the accused. So you're feeling unsafe, you're feeling unsettled, things can start happening. The covert retaliation that I'm talking about. So now, in addition to working through, yes, you're a student, you're a victim, you're going through something. First of all, being a student is already a really huge obligation. Being a student and having misconduct occur is like double that. And then being a student, navigating misconduct, and then going through the complaint procedure, it's like triple time. When do you sleep? When you eat? When you breathe? And it's just a complete
mm,
burial of
yeah,
of the survivor in a lot of ways. So yeah,
yeah.
they get snowed in.
Yeah. So if the public, and that's what part of the burn list is about, if the public really knew and understood how retaliation really works in academia, what are some of the things that might shock them the most?
Yeah. I think they'd be shocked the most by the actual violence of it all.
Wow.
Um, I want to mention, and I did resign from University of Washington, that one of the stories that dominated the headlines, I think 2024 and 2023, was when 5 Black police officers sued University of Washington for discrimination. and it came out in the news that one of the police officers said, someone shot a gun through my window. Another one had his brake lines cut. While I was there, I happened to know a woman who is convinced that, you know, uh,
Wow.
that someone internally targeted her and had her ambushed in a park, leading to a traumatic brain injury.
Oh,
And
wow.
I myself have my own suspicions about things like that have occurred.
Wow.
Um, and so and I don't want to give away all the really shocking things that are in my book, but there are some pretty dark stories in there that were violent and were threatening. But then just like more of the kind of general forms of retaliation, they include things like lukewarm references, removing authors, isolating someone, removing them from projects and committees and
Mm,
things like that.
mm, mm.
Back channel references where someone calls a friend and says, and I've seen this happen. Like I've had colleagues tell me, yes, I applied for this job over at this other university, trying to get out of the situation that I'm in right now. And I found out that one of my colleagues called over there and said, she's difficult. So they were trying to prevent her from escaping that environment and going on with her life. Um, so there's and then then there's also things like illegal wage theft, protected leave violations, retaliatory, fraudulent counter complaints. I would really like to reference the book Complaint here by Sarah Ahmed. She famously resigned from Goldsmiths publicly over the university's failure to respond to sexual harassment. And people started writing her letters. So she took all these letters and she started analyzing them for similarities and themes in terms of how these victims were saying their complaints were handled at their universities. And she talks about, she lays these things out, these similarities. And there is retaliation is one of the things that comes up. Shadow policies is another thing that comes up, but I would definitely recommend, in addition to picking up a copy of my book, picking up a copy of Sarah Ahmed's Complaint to really get some idea of what's really going on when people try to file a complaint in higher ed.
Okay. Um, just want to take I want to just lighten, take a deep breath. I have a couple of questions that I like to ask, and I borrowed it from my favorite journalist, Barbara Walters.
Okay.
So here goes, Julie. You don't even have to answer it. It's cute. It's kind of fun. It just lightens. So here goes. Excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with.
Oh, that's a hard
Yeah, it's
question.
a hard question.
Family or friends, someone living or dead that I'd like to spend a whole day
And it
with.
could be a couple. There's no rules here, you know.
I'd love to hang out with Nikola Tesla, and I'd like to ask him who he thinks burned his lab down to the ground,
Oh, cool.
because I think someone did.
Cool. I like that. I never heard that one before, but that's really, really interesting. Good answer. Good answer. And one other question I like to ask, just to, take a deep breath. Do you have any favorite movies?
Oh, that's another hard one. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
but,
Those are hard questions.
yeah,
Depends
they're
on which era, right? Depends on which era of my life.
whatever,
Um, oh man, that is so hard. I really liked the recent Frankenstein uh movie, and let's see, favorite childhood movie, hands down, would be The Never Ending Story.
okay. Is that
Um,
with Falcor?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
Falcor the Dragon. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's
Good.
there's a good collection, but I don't know. It's
That's
hard
fine.
to,
That's
yeah,
fine. Um, back to work. So,
back to work.
back to work. Little diversion. Academicabuse.com isn't, as I've seen it, isn't just a website. It's kind of like a living archive of what's going on out there. uh, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it, correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think the first responsibility I feel is just to take care of people who come there looking for help. I strive to provide strategies and resources that they can trust. And I've had people come to me with their stories and, tell me like, I want to share my story, or just like, I need to lean on someone. I know you understand. So there's that aspect of it. Um, and, I write all the resources from my own lived experiences. These are tactics that I've developed from in the trenches, and things that I found to be successful. So there's that part of the responsibility is I don't want to give anybody, misinformation, right? And then I think the other responsibility is that I want to for academicabuse.com itself to model what anonymous reporting systems could look like, so that there's a survey on the site where people can anonymously tell their story outside the institution, but I tell them your personally identifiable information, your PII, is never requested and it's never even accepted. And I would love to see others from other industries go ahead and create their own systems mirroring that, so that we can start to see more transparency and more accountability. I think anonymity would really help kick the barriers down for people that need to tell their story, need to file a complaint, and for holding people accountable.
Has anything particularly surprised you since you launched, this platform?
Oh yeah, that it worked. That I remember when I started the data dashboard, I was like thinking I might get like a few stories a month. You know, I did not foresee getting like 100 stories dumped a day, and
Wow.
then having to go through and manually
Wow.
figure which ones are the right ones, which ones aren't. I did not foresee it being almost 6,000 stories in a year. That was wildly surprising. And I think also what was wildly surprising was how many people have visited it, how many people have read it, how many people have engaged with it. Um, as like a new website in the great internet, like the great World Wide Web, you don't expect to be seen. And I mean, I was shocked. I've seen my page hit the number one Google search results within the first year. I was like, wow, and that's organic. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Truly, truly, truly. And I study that each week, the Google search stuff. And, I talked about Kay Wagner and Bold Authors Network. And we talk about that all the time, the Google search and metadata and keywords, algorithm stuff. I had no, I'm an
Yeah.
octogenarian. What the hell do I want to know about that stuff? But it's
Yeah.
piled on me every day, it's such a
Yeah.
part. Um, so telling the truth publicly comes with consequences. Did you lose anything, and what did you gain in that process of telling the truth?
Well, I think the thing is the book launches on March 17th. So I don't know yet what I've lost or what I've gained, but I can say this, the process of writing has been an absolute reclamation of my experiences. Um, I call it like tagging bodies on a post-war battlefield and sending them home for a proper burial.
Oh, boy,
Uh,
that's interesting. I like that.
yeah, and I really feel that way. I
I
feel
like
like
that.
the bodies are laid to rest, in a way.
I like that. Um, yeah, we talked about it briefly before we went on air. The whole institution of being an author. I'm not going to talk about it now. Anyway, I like this question. I like this a lot. It goes under the big P, which is provocative. Do you think institutions are capable of reform, or is something more radical, like we're seeing in Washington, required?
Yeah. Well, I mean, institutions are only as good as the people they allow and keep inside. Excuse me. So when those of us who hold them accountable or try to hold them accountable are pushed out, the status quo stays the same. So are institutions capable of reform? I'm skeptical, but I'm hopeful.
Okay, well, that's nice. Hey, we're all, we're all hopeful. I'm hopeful for an early spring because it's been cold.
Oh yeah.
Whatever, that's hopeful. I'm being glib, but this is not a time to be glib. So, what would you say to somebody, Julie, who's currently trapped inside an abusive academic system? And you're going to have people coming out and reaching out to you, so you got to be prepared for that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's been happening already. I mean, the first thing I would say to you, number one, is trust yourself. Just you're not imagining this. I know that everyone has told you that this doesn't happen in higher ed, but I'm here to tell you it happens all the time. You're not imagining this. Trust yourself. The second thing I would say is get on academicabuse.com, read the strategies that I've published there. If you have questions, reach out, send me an email. There's a contact form on the site. There's even a chat window. If I'm there, I'll chat with you. And I have built the resources that are on this platform from 20 years of experience. So,
Mm.
I like to say that these strategies have worked for me. And if you're missing something or there's a reason why you can't apply one, let me know. But I think the other thing I want to say is don't rush to action. I like to say, be all bite and no bark. So you gather your intel, you gather your documents, you wait until the right time. But then there's a balance, right? You got to bark too. Like at some point, you have to, but that's another story. So, but bottom line, trust yourself. You're not imagining this.
Okay. Okay. Last major question. How can colleagues and advisors and administrators become allies instead of bystanders? And history is filled with bystanders.
um, I don't think they really can. And I would say because that higher ed is set up in such a cult-like manner that for them to become to become an ally rather than a bystander is to risk their professional future, right? So, I mean, trust me, I tried. I tried to be an ally, and I had my experiences with that. So I think that we really need a complete overhaul of higher ed, and then we can start to look at the bystanders and say, okay, this space should be safe for you to be an ally now.
Hmm. It's funny. By the way, this has been, I use this word judiciously. It's been sumptuous, if that's the correct word to use, the time, because it's been so powerful and enlightening and necessary and brave. That word keeps coming into my field of vision. Bravery. It's, you got to be brave. And it's funny, in my own microcosmic world, I've had issues, not what you're talking about, with quote higher education, because I sit and I talk to people all over the world, amazing people, and I'm always recruiting people. Hey, hey, can you use an intern? I mentor students, and so, or I can put together and teach students. And I mentor, but I could be doing so much more. And I reach out to academia. I'm in such a great position with 700, interviews and videos and the people, and they're all wonderful, amazing people. Who, yeah, Calvin, yeah, I'm more than happy. And I've enlisted some people. We've done panels and stuff, amazing. But I reach out to academia, and
Yep.
nobody listens, and nobody has vision, and I go crazy because I could be getting students precious internships, and nobody listens, nobody cares. They're in their own cubicle. For me, and forget your stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, and but it's the lack of vision in academia for a lot of things. It's a very closed box.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, it's a really closed box. There is no thinking outside the box, and it's
Oh, you better not.
no,
No.
and it's
You better
funny.
get in trouble. Think
It's funny.
outside the box.
I turned 80, and when you turn 80, you don't really. It's not that I don't care. I really do care, but I'm not shy anymore. That's why I wrote the Pope. I'm really proud about that. I wrote the Pope
Yeah.
a few months ago to tell him about my spirituality because I think it's haunting. Which means if I can write the Pope, gosh, I can write anybody, and I will, and I
You
will.
do it.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna do it.
Closed mouths
So,
don't get
so
fed.
we are actually perfectly on time.
Yay.
It worked out absolutely perfect. This whole session has been absolutely, for me, just amazing. And I think for everybody, you need to know and understand and feel and respect the bravery that's coming from you because it's bravery and this stuff's got to be taken care of. And I thank you for spending Friday afternoon with me. Um, and I sit in this chair 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. So come back. We can talk more about it. And hopefully we will, because this is a never, like that movie, never ending story. This is, by the way, a never ending story. Two. I just made that up, two. So thank you, Julie. Don't leave. I'm just going to stop
You.
recording. But you actually made my day. So thank you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you. Stay right there. Okay, boom. We're ending.